Welcome to the Finding Fertile Ground podcast, where I discover stories of grit, resilience, and connection. I'm your host, Marie G.G., and this podcast is brought to you by Fertile Ground Communications. We help organizations and people discover what makes them special and help them share that with the world. Look us up on fertilegroundcommunications.com. Today is the final episode of my 3 Men of Color Redefining Fatherhood series. My guest today is Ken Harge, a Black man living in Connecticut who lays tile by day and is a creator and entrepreneur in his spare time. During COVID-19, he's been writing a symphony called The Healing. Ken comes from a fractured family, and he believes that most of society's ills are caused by a lack of self-esteem in men. Hello, Ken. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing well. How has COVID-19 affected you?
Initially, it shut down a job that I was on. By day, I am a tile contractor, tile installer. I was on a job with a big union company, and we were up in Maine, which from me is 6 hours north of me. And we usually stay for a week, and they shut the job down right at the beginning of the quarantine. And it was rough at first. I've had some work, enough to keep me going since then. But the fact that can't really go anywhere except to get some takeout food. And I can cook, but cooking has gotten to be a drag really quick, especially when you're cooking for one. Like, the monotony of it is sucky. Can't entertain at my house. And so, that's been a drag, and seeing all the businesses down. So I guess I'll say I'm at 50%.
Do you live alone? For me personally, it'd be hard for me to live alone right now. Is that hard?
Yeah.
You get bored with yourself, probably.
Here we are. And I have tons of things to keep me busy. I have big projects up. I always have multiple big projects going. But still, I managed to find a way to get bored.
Yes.
I'm good at that.
Exactly. So can you share with our listeners about your life?
Well, I grew up in Waterbury, Connecticut. I was born here, lived all my life here. I always tell people that are familiar with Waterbury to not hold it against me. It's kind of a big city with a knucklehead mindset. We're not progressive and advanced as I think we should be. I am an author. I am a musician. I am currently working on a symphony, which is a gigantic project for me. And I am a playwright. And I am a guy with a lot of opinions about what's going on in the world today, and I'm not super shy about sharing what those are.
Well, that's my next question.
Yeah, here you go.
Yeah, how are you feeling about what's going on in the world and the recent horrible violent deaths by police that have been inflicted on Black people and with protests? How are you feeling about things, Ken?
I'm in kind of a funny place. I am obviously a Black man. Your listeners might not be able to tell, but they can take my word for it. It's heartbreaking to see all that's going on. And I am a person that does not pull the race card easily, but I pull it when I see it needs to be pulled. And I am super offended when people say or imply in so many words that, oh, there is no systemic racism. And almost as if I just wrote a post the other day that a lot of times people feel like saying something is racist is like calling them a bastard. Like, no, it's not. It's an actual thing. And there's actual ways you can see it. And so often, I think there's an attempt. I think a lot of times, maybe even most of the times, it's not a conscious attempt, but it's an attempt for some reason, white people often feel defensive. It's very odd to me, but I've noticed it quite a bit. And there's this thing of all lives matter. I just unfriended a guy who we weren't really friends. We went to grammar school and high school together. We were friendly. And he said a couple of things that, oh, well, things were worse under Obama with racism and all lives matter. And to me, all lives matter is almost profane, because I think that probably with very little exception, what a person is trying to do when they say all lives matter is to tell Black people to shut up, forget what you're seeing, and move along. It's kind of a coward way of saying that what you feel doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
That's where I am. I just wrote a huge article about racism. It's called The Notion of Superiority. which is a phrase used by a scholar some years ago who studied racism and said, I'll paraphrase that, one people cannot enslave another people for 4 centuries and not come out of that with a notion of superiority. My premise for the article is that there's this notion of superiority, almost like air in America, and it wafts through the air, and people breathe it in. And I think that a lot of times, just like real air, like we don't even pay attention to the fact that we're breathing, but we are, and it goes into us, and it feeds this racist thing that's going on.
I am with you on that. And my first guest that I interviewed, she said that she got into a discussion with a woman who was saying all lives matter. And she was sharing how the police had been called on her and her family several times. And she shared this with this woman, and this woman said, well, they were just concerned about you. It's like telling Black people, like, just move on with your life. Racism is over,
Yeah. Ignore what you're feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Ignore what you're seeing.
Yes, what you're experiencing. Do you remember when you first learned about race? What did your parents teach you about race?
Well, as a very young kid, I knew what black and white were, but I grew up from the time I was in second grade in a neighborhood where we were one of maybe 2 or 3 Black families on the entire long street. So from the time I was very, very young, we always had what white kids had. And that really informed me. I've talked about it in my book, in my play. And so unlike kids who grew up in the projects, one neighborhood over, who lived in an area where there were all Black families, we were different. And so it has informed how I've lived my life. I've never felt intimidated by race. I operate in a world where I'm almost always the only Black guy, and it's not intimidating to me because I know just intuitively how to operate in that world. However, being Black in America, of course, you're going to experience racism of one kind or another, and I have. But the thing that I think keeps me going is my mindset that I expect to be treated how I want to be treated. In other words, what generally happens in my experience is that you tend to get what you expect to get. However, that does not protect you always. There are times when racism comes up and uncomfortable things happen to you when you're followed in a store, when there's been times when my trade takes me in some very nice areas. And there's been a couple of times when I've been pulled over because somebody called the cops on me and said they didn't think I belonged there. And then there's subtle things that I've seen it enough that I think I can identify it, where I go to someone's house and I'm a tile installer. And to be fair, there's not a lot of Black tile installers. There just isn't. I'm one of the few. Mm-hmm. So I go to people's house and they can't say, crap, you're a Black guy, can you do tile? So what they say is, so are you by yourself? I'm there to set up and put the plywood down or whatever. And they say, so are you going to be the guy doing the tile? And I'm really good at dealing with people, and I get them laughing quick, but I can identify that, oh, no, Black people don't do it.
Right. I guess, Oregon is a very white state, and Portland's a very white city. And I don't know if I've ever been to Connecticut, but I kind of picture Connecticut being very similar, that being a Black man in Connecticut may be very similar to being a Black man in Portland or Oregon.
Connecticut is very diverse. Is the word.
Is it really?
The town I live in, Waterbury, was a town of about 125,000 or so. So it's a city. Uh-huh. And there are big pockets of Black folk. There's a huge influx of Albanians. There's the neighborhoods where the Hispanic people live. And then you go to the big cities like Hartford or New Haven, Bridgeport. There's a lot of minorities there. But then there's, in all the affluent areas, they're predominantly white. And there's a lot of affluent areas in Connecticut.
Yeah, that's kind of my impression of it. Yeah. Do you like living in Connecticut?
Nope.
No, really?
Well, primarily because I don't like the winters.
Oh.
And I've been trying to get out of here forever. And my comfort level keeps me here. But I would love to get out of here.
Where do you want to go?
Someplace where there's never snow, or almost never snow. I like cities. I think I would like to live in a city. I think I'm kind of an urban guy.
Maybe California?
Probably not California,
Mm.
probably maybe the Carolinas. I even talked to a friend of mine, Facebook friend, we've become friends, who lives in Albuquerque. And to hear her talk about it, I never thought about it. It sounds like an amazing, amazing place.
Mm.
Something like that. If they get snow, like it's gone by 12 o'clock in the afternoon, or maybe even south, further south, I'd consider parts of Florida.
Maybe not until COVID's over.
Yeah, oh, for sure, for sure.
You don't want to go anywhere near them right
Right.
now. I
I think I
know.
have a lot of time to prepare the way it's looking.
I know. So on your website, you say you believe you are here on this planet at this time to speak your mind, and that's what you do. How has that gotten you into trouble, and how has it served you well?
Well, I learned at home. My parents were old fashioned, are old fashioned. My father was a bully. He was like over the top. He earned a huge place in my book and my play, talking about our very troubled relationship. So I couldn't speak my mind much at home. And that kind of prompted me to speak my mind everywhere else. Somehow it didn't suppress me. It made me this guy who couldn't be suppressed. And I remember in grade school at debates, even though I was kind of in the middle with kids. I wasn't one of the cool kids, but I wasn't an outcast. I was kind of in the middle. But in the debates, I was that guy because I was always good, as far back as I can remember. I was always good at expressing myself. And then I got into music, learned how to play piano, took lessons for a little while. Further along, I started a blog years ago when Blogger was popular. And from there, I thought I wanted to do a TV talk show. So I don't know if they have it out in Portland, but they have public access TV here. And so I started a TV show, and I started writing an actual script for my 30-minute show every week, and got to become an even better writer, got a lot of compliments and whatnot. And from that, I started writing more detailed blog posts, and eventually it got me into music production. I wrote a book. I wrote and performed in a one-man play. I have another 2 books on the way. I have another play on the way. I keep at it. So it's served me well.
Didn't you win an award recently for music you'd composed? I think I saw that.
I composed music for a couple of films.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of.
This was probably before you and I had become friends. I composed music for a short film. It had been something on my bucket list. I'm a very jump in and figure it out kind of guy. And I never had done that before, but I knew I could do it. So I figured it out, did a music score for a short film called Samuel's Got a Sweet Tooth. It has gotten accolades literally all over the globe. And in one film festival, I did get nominated for Best Film Score.
That's it. That's what I read. Well,
And it was an honor just to be nominated.
Yes, that's amazing for your first time. That's pretty
First
amazing.
time,
So
yeah.
what is your musical style like?
My musical style is more like R&B, soul music, hip hop, funk, like that kind of music.
Mhm.
But when I did the film score, the guy wanted more orchestral music.
Mhm.
So I'm a quick study. I'm not, a classical pianist, but I can approximate it good enough that people might think I am.
Wow.
And so I did that, and with technology, I could play all the strings and cellos and all of that stuff on my keyboards. And so I figured it out.
And so the symphony that you're writing, I take it, is a classical symphony, or?
It is a good reflection of me based on my experience doing film scores. I've actually done 2. I've accumulated a huge library of the sounds to play on the keyboard, orchestral sounds and whatnot. They call them sample libraries. And it is largely classical, but there's also contemporary music mixed in, which is a good reflection of me. It's called The Healing. And I did a little bit of research about symphonies and know that they are 4 movements. And The Healing is about the pandemic. And the first movement is Life as We Knew It. The second movement is The Infection. The third movement is Life as We Know It. And the fourth movement is The Healing.
Wow, that sounds like a wonderful project.
It is. And it's I find that music and writing are very cathartic for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who are your musical influences?
Well, I think Quincy Jones is the godfather of the universe when it comes to music production. Earth, Wind, and Fire, Stevie Wonder, Babyface, The Temptations, kind of a wide range.
Uh-huh.
Jay-Z,
Uh-huh.
I like hip hop too, and so I have a fairly diverse range, and I'm starting to enjoy even classical music more. I look forward to things opening up where I can attend my first symphony performance.
Oh.
It'll be very educational for me as well.
Have you ever heard of Pink Martini?
I have not.
You might look them up. They're from Portland originally. They use a lot of different musical influences, and the leader is a pianist, a classically trained pianist, but it's very eclectic music. I think you might like it.
Yeah, I'll have to
Yeah,
check it
I'll
out.
send you a
Pink
link.
Martini.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thinking back on your life, what obstacles have you overcome?
The immediate thing that comes to mind is the relationship with my father. He did things right. He and my mother are still married. So I never lived in a house without a father like far too many Black families have done. So I always had that structure, but he was also a bully. And, he'd beat me up for the expression on my face, like
Mm.
literally. I couldn't express myself much, and I had to learn how to tiptoe around him. And I was always a smart kid, so I mostly learned how to do that. And my mother let it happen.
Mm.
She couldn't fight him to the ground, but I felt like she could have and should have protected me. And so I've always had to deal with the feeling of feeling like it wasn't worth it for my mother to protect me. And so you go out into the world with no emotional foundation under you. I'm an emotional orphan, I say. I raised
Mm.
myself emotionally and did the best I could do. I was always very inquisitive, and I loved to read since I was a young kid. And so I've always learned to educate myself and grow. And I've evolved a lot over the years because of it. But overcoming that lack of self-esteem, and even saying that out loud is funny to me because I don't present like a typical low self-esteem person, but I know that my troubles are because of that. And I know it's because I never had the support under me to have parents. They're like, we're behind you. We
Mhm.
support you. We love you unconditionally. Like there was none of that. And so I have fought with it in a number of ways. But then even the upside of that, because I've learned to use all of this to my advantage, is I am now, they say to teach what you need to learn. I am probably 80% done with it. A course for men on developing their self-esteem, which I think that can literally change the face of the planet. If men have self-esteem, they don't smack their wives. They don't abuse their children. They don't go out in the street and do violence. I think they don't even go out and do terrorism. I think it's only broken men who do those things. And I think ultimately it comes down to low self-esteem and the fact that it's never been safe in this world for men to have feelings. We're taught to suppress them. I was taught to suppress them. Get smacked if you cry over. Get smacked if you cry over getting smacked, literally.
Mm.
So like that's what I've had to overcome.
Do you still have a relationship with your father, or?
I haven't had a conversation with my father in probably 20 years. And over religion, I haven't had a relationship with my mother in probably 7 or 8 years.
Because she's very religious.
Yeah, and so we used to be, they still are Jehovah's Witnesses. And, I got kicked out, which in retrospect, I'm super happy I did. So my mother won't speak to me, and I have no relationship with my father. And so, even in that way, I'm, orphaned. But, everything for a reason. That's the byline in my book and play, which are the same topic. And if I had a lovely, supportive father and mother, I am positive I would not have turned out to be the creative person that I am. I am positive that I would
Mhm.
not have become the writer that I've become. And with that, I can speak to people in a way that people who understand it can speak. I can speak to hurt people and they know I know the language. I can speak to lonely people and they know he knows what it is. And so it's all been for a reason.
Yeah. And so your course, when do you think your course will be ready for self-esteem for men? I think that's really critically necessary in our
Thank
world.
you. Thank you. I'm hoping to have the beta version of it live. I'm going to say before the end of August. And I'll have a link to it on my website, kenharge.com.
Great. Well, it seems like you've been really busy creating on a number of different levels. So
Yes,
you strike me as a highly creative person.
that's me. That's how I get all my stuff out of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, I pop.
Yes, exactly. How do you like to spend your spare time when you're not creating, or how do you relax?
I don't relax a lot, but when I do, I love documentaries. I turned off my cable because it was killing so much of my time. And I knew for years that, bro, you can't watch that much TV and do the things you want to do with your life. So I cut it off, which has helped immensely. But I still watch too much Netflix.
Yeah. What do you watch on Netflix? Do you have any recommendations?
Along the Black Lives Matter vein, 13th
Uh-huh.
by Ava DuVernay is absolutely phenomenal. How They See Us, I believe.
Oh,
The
that's really good.
documentary about the Central Park boys
Yeah.
is shattering. How,
Uh-huh.
in fact, she did that film as well. She's a phenomenal director.
She is.
I'll watch anything from as diverse as that to cooking shows. I just watched a great documentary about David Foster, who is a producer. He's guy behind Chicago's most famous hits, Celine Dion, Andre Bocelli, Josh Groban. He's I think Quincy Jones is the godfather, but David Foster is his first lieutenant.
So what mistakes have you made in your life, and what have you learned from them?
I got married when
That's
I
great.
was a young man. I was in
Uh-huh.
my early 20s to a woman who was 10 years older than me. I
Hmm.
was her second marriage. She had kids that were half my age, and it was way more than I could handle and way more than she could handle. I was a terrible husband. She was a terrible wife. Eventually, she got smart and left me. And just like getting kicked out of Jehovah's Witnesses, thank God she did. Although I didn't feel that way initially, I
Uh-huh.
was absolutely traumatized
Mm.
when she left. It took me a year and change to get over it. And now I am so happy that she did. That was probably the biggest mistake. I've made a bunch of smaller mistakes.
Were you raised Jehovah's Witness through your childhood as well?
We began studying with them when I had just graduated the eighth grade. So I was 13. I was a witness for like 14 years. So it was a big part of my formative years. Informed me quite a bit. And like everything else, like I don't regret it, but I couldn't imagine it has washed the taste for any kind of religion out of my mouth for life. I
Well,
kind of like that saying.
yeah,
I
yeah,
might
that's
have
a
to
good
write
one.
that
You should
down.
write it down. That's good.
Yes.
What I know about Jehovah's Witness is if you leave, then people are not supposed to talk to you.
Well,
Is
it's
that
if you
right?
get kicked out.
If you get kicked out. Oh, that's okay.
Right.
So if you leave on your own, they can still talk to you?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
see.
it's one of those things.
Uh,
But they're
huh.
very, very extremely devout and strict. And one
Uh-huh.
thing to their credit, when they say talk about following the Bible, that's exactly what they mean. It's not optional,
Uh-huh.
like it is with most other religions. We're like,
Uh-huh.
you don't really have to do that stuff. As a witness, you damn sure do.
Uh-huh. Right. I don't think I would fit in very well in that
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't fit
personally.
into anything now.
So what are you most proud of?
On the one hand, my creative achievements, I've done some phenomenal things. I jumped in and wrote a one man play. It's called You Are Here for Something Great. Most even accomplished actors never do a one man show. I did. I wrote a full length novel based on the same story, which is part of my life. And I had to expand and make fictional characters because I haven't lived enough apparently to fill out a full novel. So my music accomplishments, and I'm also very proud of. I've always wanted to have children, but it was never in the cards. I never wanted to just be like a weekend dad. I
Uh-huh.
wanted to have a proper family, but it was just never right. Maybe 10 years or so ago, I kind of felt internally the call to volunteer with Big Brothers, and met this kid Prince. He was 13 at the time. He was always in trouble at school. There's always mischievous stuff like talking and shenanigans, but he'd get kicked out of school, which is very problematic actually as I think about it, like nearly every week. And I stayed with him. A woman I was dating at the time, like it got to the point where I couldn't see I was doing any good. I was getting frustrated. She's a mother. She said, trust me, you are doing good. I stayed with it, and eventually he turned his life around. He's gainfully employed. A month or two ago, he came by here with his brand new car he got, and he's a great kid now. And I don't know that he would be had it not been for me. And so that may be my proudest moment.
That is an incredible accomplishment to be proud of, to
Yes.
help a young person.
Yes.
Excellent. What is one of your superpowers?
Oh, I can tell you that instantly. My superpower is sensitivity. I am very super clear on that. I wrote a meme about it a few years ago. I used to believe, it's so funny the correlation between this and you superheroes on TV. A lot of times superheroes, when they're young, they find this ability they have, but they don't know how to use it right. And it's awkward and it's troublesome until they learn how to harness it and focus it. And then it becomes that thing that they can do good with. And so for many years, I'm an unusually sensitive man. And people say, oh, you're too sensitive. Not like in a feminine kind of way, but just like I'm hypersensitive about stuff. I do get my feelings hurt easily. And eventually it dawned on me that sensitivity is not a weakness, it's my strength. And it's the thing that informs every creative thing that I do. It informs me even on my job as a tile installer. Like I knew barely nothing when I got into it. But because I didn't want people to think I was a scrub, I learned how to get better and better and better. And I always wanted people to say, you're awesome. So I got better at it. My music, when I started, people said, oh, it was raggedy. And so I learned to get better. My writing was not so good. I learned to get better because I was always sensitive about what people think. And additionally, I can sense, like, not in a psychic kind of way per se, but like if you walk in a room, I could usually tell, like, what's the matter? Like I could tell there's something wrong. That is absolutely my superpower.
Especially for a man. I think that,
Yes,
because it's not really cultivated in men like it is in
not
women.
at
And
all. Not at all.
no, and my father is he's a very sensitive man. He was a social worker. He pursued social work probably because he was pursuing his sensitivity.
Right.
And I also am the mother of 3 sons. So I
Yep.
really believe in cultivating that in men.
Yes. It's super
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. What do you think parents can do to cultivate sensitivity in their sons?
I think that parents have to allow boys to be human and not feel like they have to be tough all the time. To tell a boy that boys don't cry, to me, is almost emotional abuse. And if it's not emotional abuse, it's setting them up to be emotionally abusive or to think low of himself, that if I can't express my feelings must not matter. And so that feeds on itself. So to encourage boys to have a full range of feelings, they should be allowed to be fully feeling human beings and to embrace those qualities that for so long have been held to be strictly for girls and women.
I like what you said earlier about self-esteem being at the root cause of a lack of self-esteem being at the root cause of terrorism and bullying and all
Yes,
these things. And I
yes.
wonder how whether you have opinions about the police bureaus in this country and that issue, self-esteem and sensitivity.
It's not so much about self-esteem with the police department. First of all, I'll give my disclaimer. I have friends, like legitimate friends, that I have their phone number that come to my house that are police, men and women. I think most cops are good. But what happens, even to the good ones, but the good ones can control it, when you put a badge on a person's chest and a gun on their waist and the right to use it, it changes people and it makes them think that they're the boss, which is exactly the wrong thing to do. I think we have to recondition the police force across the nation to really reconnect with the mandate of protect and serve, and that you are not the boss. You are here to be of service, and their interaction with every single person they meet has to be, how can I be of service to you? And if that is what drives them, it will change everything. And there's a bunch of reforms I think that have to be made. I just saw on YouTube about cops, and I write about it in my article. One of the problems is the union, where cop does something lousy, and the union, with their power, they get the cop off. The union has to serve the interests of the public too, and it can't be separate. They can't be only thinking about the cops, because then it creates this thing where the cops start getting off with things, and that starts making them think that they're our boss and can do whatever they want. And the whole foundation of why they are there and how they should conduct themselves, that whole thing needs to be reconditioned. And in some cases, their policies and whatnot need to be trashed almost entirely.
So think of yourself at age 21. What would you say to that person now?
I would say, don't get married to that woman, because it wasn't that long after that I got married. Don't do that one. Pay your bills on time and save money. Because of how I was raised and very restrictive, when I got out of the house, I actually had to run away when I was 19 years old, because my father would have murdered me had I had the gall to move out before he said I could. So my response, I never did drugs. I've never been an alcoholic. My response was to spend money irresponsibly. That was kind of my drug. Kind of stuck with me.
Really?
I've grown to make enough money to pay for my habits, so to speak.
But you like to spend money. You're addicted to spending money, maybe?
I am.
What do you buy? Like toys? Like you like?
I mean, for a while there was that, but now my studio is super well equipped. I don't need anything up there. But I'm a big fashion guy. I love clothes. If the woman of my dreams, like I live in this house, a 3-bedroom house, she wouldn't be able to bring in much more than her slippers. Like there's no room in here. I love clothes. I have shoes, sneakers, suits, everything. I love clothes. Those are probably the big areas where I spend money.
Do you ever get rid of clothes? Do you ever give them away, or?
Not much.
Not
I probably
much.
could do a little bit. I always want to have a lot of clothes. I need choices.
You need choices.
Gotta have choices, Marie, because your sneakers have to match the stitching in your jeans.
Absolutely.
It can't be a different color.
Well, it seems like that gives you joy. So, according to the Marie Kondo method, it's all about joy. So if it gives you joy, you should keep them, right?
Yes.
So what about like recently during the pandemic? Have you been spending less money? I mean, I feel like I've been spending less money. Is that
a lot
you
less?
Probably been shopping for clothes or anything?
Right. Yeah, I can't buy my couple of pairs of new sneakers that I need every summer because they have to be super fresh. You need every possible color combination. So I haven't done that because what's the point? I have cut back. Like I said before, I actually am a pretty good cook, but because I live alone, it's kind of a drag for me, at least, to cook for myself. So there's this spot that I used to always go to. It's kind of like Cheers. It's like a pub, a decent restaurant. And, I literally know everybody, and I could go in anytime and always know somebody. And so I was there like 3, 4, 5 times a week. Now I only go there a couple times a week for takeout.
Where can listeners connect with you online?
At Ken Harge on Facebook. Same thing on Instagram. My main website, which I'm going to start maintaining a lot, I haven't been good to it, is kenharge.com. That will be the best place to see what I'm up to and see the new projects coming through. I also have klhmusic.com, which is a music site where I have instrumentals that I've created for singers and rappers who want to buy the music track if they don't have access to a producer or whatever.
So thinking about my subtitle, Grit, Resilience, and Connection, what do those words mean to you, and how could someone increase their resilience or their grit?
Excellent. How I maintain my resilience is to remember why I am here, which might be a challenge for a lot of people who don't know why they're here. But everyone is here for something great, and it is well worth finding out what that is. And a lot of times people get tripped up because when I say that, they think, well, I have no interest in being a movie star or a rock star or an athlete or a billionaire and think that's the only reason. But there's a gazillion ways to be great. And there's something for everyone. And if they seek that out and find it and work at that, it can keep you going. I find that for me, like I've dealt with depression on and off. I say that I am a high functioning depressed person. Sometimes it gets really scary. Sometimes, it's always some level of always there somehow. A lot of times just like an undercurrent that's beneath everything. I find that for one, writing, I have said many times, has literally saved my life because I get all of my stuff out of me. And so if a person is not a writer, they can journal and just get their stuff out of them. I find that giving voice to your feelings can be extremely healing, even if they're the only one who hears it. And another thing that people might try that I did one day, I don't know how it came to me, but I was coming home from work one day and it just occurred to me to talk to myself as my father. I had about an hour drive home and I said all the things that I wish he had said.
Oh, wow.
And I cried 3/4 of the way home and in my driveway for another half an hour. But it occurred to me how important it was for me to hear that out loud.
Yeah.
And so people can give themselves that gift. If they have something that ails them, something that troubles them, talk about it out loud, literally out loud, and hear it. And it can give you a great deal of satisfaction and validation to be validated. Because at the end of the day, we all want to know that we matter and that we're seen and heard. And sometimes you might have to be the person that sees and hears yourself. And it's valuable. I'd say that writing and speaking to yourself. And if there's a person who's done you wrong, be that person and say the right things that they should have said to you.
I love that idea. Yeah, you're the second interview in a row I've had with a man who had a difficult relationship with their father. Back to the course that you're planning, I think that's another really important factor, in training men to be sensitive.
Yes.
Helps them be better fathers.
It does. My father could have used it. His father, we all do what we know to do. My father's father was a bully to him. He did. I am convinced that we all do the best we know how to do, no matter what it is, literally. He did what he knew to do. He was a good provider and he responded, I think, to me the way he knew how to respond. Sometimes I wonder if he saw me in himself and couldn't bear to see it. And he was striking out at it because he couldn't look at it. But had he had self-esteem, he couldn't have treated me the way he did.
Did you have siblings?
I did. I'm the oldest of 4. My brother got it probably as bad as I did. When my sister came along, he had lost a lot of steam, not physically, but I don't know, somehow, maybe just because she was a girl, I don't know. But she got it a lot easier. And then my last sibling, there was a little bit of a gap, several years, and she got away with murder.
Oh, like, really?
It was
youngest child.
It was unbelievable, like what she got away with. So,
are you still in touch with your siblings?
2 of them, my 2 sisters. We have a very, very fractured family. My brother and I don't speak, so I've learned that I believe that family is what family does.
Well, that's a huge way that you've been resilient, that you survived your difficult childhood and your difficult nuclear family. My final question is there a story of grit, resilience, and connection that has been an inspiration for you?
I love when I see inspirational things. Although, I did see on YouTube, this kid is a black kid whose home, he lived with his mother, just the 2 of them, got destroyed in Katrina, during Katrina, and he got a job. The job was 20 minutes away, and he was lucky to get it. And when he was heading to work, his raggedy car died. Actually, the day before. He knew he couldn't afford to lose this job because he had to support himself and his mother. And he Googled how long it would take to walk. Google said it would take 7 hours to walk 20 miles. He got up at 12 o'clock at midnight to be to work at 7 o'clock in the morning. As he's walking to work, about the halfway point, a cop pulls up behind him and starts following him. And so he thinks what any black kid is going to think if a cop car is following you. The cop is like, what are you doing? Because, of course, walking and it's dark and you're black, of course you're up to no good.
Right.
And so he said, I'm walking to work. And the cop says, get in the car. The cop drove him the rest of the way to work, a white cop.
Uh-huh.
And when the company that he was working for heard about it, the owner of the company, a moving company, drove out there to meet him, gave him his car. It just goes to show that all black kids aren't up to no good and all white cops are not bad. We have to allow for the goodness in each other. And so I'm inspired by those kinds of stories. I believe in humanity. I believe that racism can be ended. I believe that we're not stuck hopelessly in this. I don't know that I'll see the end of it, but I believe it can happen. We can certainly make changes, and I kind of operate from a position of optimism. Some of my black friends, maybe a lot of them think I'm naive. Some of them might think I'm stupid for thinking this way, but I don't follow the path of other people. I believe it. I speak to it. I write about it. And I think I can make a difference and change in the world. And that's what I'll be doing with the rest of my time here.
I love it. I think it's just fascinating, given your childhood and your family upbringing, that you've emerged with so much optimism and hope. That's an inspiration. I find that very inspiring.
Thank you. So, thank you. Well, everything for a reason.
Yeah, that's a lot of wisdom there.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
very
so
good.
much, Ken.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you for joining today and hearing Ken's thoughts about self-esteem, sensitivity, creativity, policing, and Black Lives Matter. The story about talking to himself and saying the words his father never spoke to him brought tears to my eyes. I hope you've enjoyed the 3 Men of Color Redefining Fatherhood series. Next week, I'm starting a new series of 4 badass Black women. My first guest is Libra Ford, Chief Operations Officer for Self-Enhancement, Inc., which provides culturally specific services for underrepresented youth and families in the Portland metro area. Libra stands at 6 foot 5 inches tall and is a former pro athlete and business owner. She has an MBA, is a certified life coach, and serves on the North Clackamas School Board. She is a powerful presence, and you won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening to the Finding Fertile Ground podcast. Our music is by jazz pianist Jonathan Swanson. This podcast is brought to you by Fertile Ground Communications. We help organizations and people discover what makes them special and help them share that with the world. Look us up on fertilegroundcommunications.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a rating and subscribe to hear our next episode.